the images from Bhopal, India on the fateful night of December 2, 1984. After that night, 22,000 people died and 550,000 others suffered serious health effects, along with over 200,000 people permanently disabled. These horrifying numbers make one think of a super disaster like an earthquake, tsunami, or terrorism, armed conflict. However, that night in Bhopal had no storms, no bombs or explosions. So what caused thousands to suddenly lose their lives like this? This is the cause of this heartbreaking disaster. Welcome to Kanha TV. Today we will explore the 1984 Bhopal disaster. Over 500,000 victims seeking justice and the helplessness of the Indian government. Before we begin today's sorrowful story, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell, so you don't miss our latest content. Now let's start with the main content. Bhopal is a city in central India, capital of Madhya Pradesh state. This is an ancient city with a rich history dating back to the early 11th century. Through many ups and downs, Bhopal has developed into a modern industrial city today. With industries like paper, leather, textiles, chemicals, factories mushroomed in the suburbs, mostly invested by foreign companies in India. These industries, besides the positive aspect of creating jobs for local people, promoting economic development, also brought many consequences. Today's story is one of the most catastrophic consequences humanity has ever witnessed. Rewinding time to Bhopal of the last century. In 1964, Indian agriculture was undergoing a green revolution. The central government wanted to solve the nationwide food shortage problem by increasing fertilizer and pesticide production. At that time, Union Carbide Corporation, a famous American company, proposed building a pesticide factory in India. And the Indian government quickly seized this opportunity. Therefore, in 1969, a small-scale pesticide factory was established in Bhopal suburbs. After 3 years of trial operation, both sides expressed satisfaction. Subsequently, a large-scale pesticide factory with 5,000-ton annual capacity was officially built. The raw material for pesticide production was a liquid chemical called methyl isocyanate, highly volatile with a boiling point of 39.6 degrees Celsius. To save costs from 1980, the factory began producing mica itself. This chemical was typically cooled into liquid form and stored in 3 double-layer stainless steel tanks, each weighing up to 45 tons. To prevent tank temperature from rising due to sunlight, most tanks were buried underground. Between the 2 tank layers was a cooling system to ensure the gas remained in liquid state. In case the tank shell cracked, leaked toxic gas would be treated by the gas filtration system. If the filtration system failed, there was an automatic ignition device that could burn the gas on the flare tower. It's important to know this is an extremely toxic chemical. Even brief exposure to low concentrations of mica, it can harm human skin and mucous membranes, especially eyes, nose, and throat. Exposure to high concentrations of mica can cause coughing, difficulty breathing, chest pain, increased secretions, even life-threatening pulmonary. During World War II, some countries used this toxic gas to mass murder Jews in concentration camps. Therefore, mica being buried underground was like a time bomb placed under Bhopal residents' pillows. Could explode at any time, endangering their lives and future generations. Due to extremely bleak business conditions afterward, failing American investors' expectations, this huge factory faced closure risk by mid-1984. Workforce was significantly reduced, from over 70 people to just 1 operator for the control panel, indicator equipment and control systems. Worker safety training time was shortened from 1 month to 15 days. All 6 safety systems on the pesticide production line were not functioning normally. The plant's manual alarm, cooling, and exhaust gas treatment systems were either broken or turned off due to lack of regular maintenance. Turning off the mica cooling system alone saved the plant $30 per day. In such conditions of both manpower shortage and lack of safety equipment, the disaster began to take shape in Bhopal. On December 2, 1984, the city of Bhopal remained peaceful as usual. with no warnings or signs indicating an impending disaster. At 0:05 on December 3rd, the plant control room received a report from the shift worker that pressure in the mic storage tank was rising, and there might be a leak from the pipeline. The operator, who was playing cards with colleagues, immediately went to check. However, due to frequent system malfunctions, he could only rely on experience to assess the situation. After a brief observation and seeing nothing unusual, he reported to everyone that there was no major problem, then returned to the control room. At 0:56, the pressure indicator needle on the control panel suddenly exceeded the allowable limit. Liquid might have turned into gas and was leaking out in large quantities. This gas should have been burned in the flare tower, but due to excessive pressure, it penetrated the pipeline system and escaped into the air. The workers had no choice but to use the final measure of using water sprays to dilute and dissolve the toxic gas. But the water pressure was too weak and couldn't reach the target. To be precise, all of the plant's safety systems were useless at this point. The leak in the plant was no different from opening Pandora's box. Although the workers shut down the equipment just minutes after the toxic gas leaked, it was already too late. They could only stand and watch as the toxic gas escaped and spread everywhere. 30 tons of toxic gas turned into a dense cloud, spreading at a speed of 5 kilometers per hour, quickly covering an area of 25 square kilometers. At 1 a.m., when the people of Bhopal were deep in sleep, Mike had covered everything, causing hundreds to lose their lives in their sleep. Those who smelled this toxic gas experienced coughing, difficulty breathing, vomiting, dry eyes. Some even went blind. Some people who learned about the plant leak immediately fled. Those who didn't know what was happening also poured into the streets. The entire city was plunged into panic, with screams and cries echoing everywhere. People crowded onto all kinds of vehicles, seeking escape routes. Never before had the streets been so crowded at 1 a.m. They had only one thought: escape as quickly as possible, as far as possible. But then many people ran in the wrong direction. Getting closer and closer to the plant, and running fast, made them breathe heavily, further accelerating poisoning. Many collapsed during their escape and never got up again. Bodies lay scattered along roads, on railway tracks, in grass, under houses, in rivers. Among them were the elderly, children, and pregnant women. At this time, Union Hospital, located outside the disaster area, received a large number of patients beyond its treatment capacity. But even more unfortunately, when doctors were informed by police that the incident might be due to an ammonia gas leak from the plant, they applied corresponding treatment measures. But of course, they were ineffective. Many patients still died during treatment. Because this was not ammonia gas, the doctors urgently contacted the American Union Carbide Corporation to inquire about the toxic gas, but the corporation's leaders refused to provide information, citing that this was an important formula for pesticide production, belonging to trade secrets that could not be disclosed. It wasn't until 3 a.m. that someone from the factory came to the police station to report that the leaking substance was MIC. At that time, doctors knew almost nothing about this chemical, so there was no way to treat it. The death toll kept rising. The neighborhood turned into a living hell. The leak was quickly reported by the press, with over 3,000 people dead just that night, and more than 300,000 people affected by this invisible killer. Fear and the shadow of the toxic gas enveloped the entire city. Even livestock couldn't escape the disaster. No one could believe that in a peaceful country, with no warfare, no natural disasters, that so many people could suddenly lose their lives in just one night. Moreover, the culprit was just seemingly fragile smoke. Invisible and harmless, it made people unable to do anything. Just breathing could lead to death. The factory director, Warren Anderson, immediately flew from the US to India to assess the situation. The Indian government arrested Anderson, but he was only held under house arrest in the factory's guest room for a few hours. Anderson called the US Embassy in India, and finally, due to pressure from the US government, he was released after posting $500 bail. Anderson immediately fled India afterward. The Indian government quickly sent a team of experts to the factory to investigate. Eventually, they determined that the risk had emerged the afternoon before the disaster occurred, during routine maintenance due to worker negligence. A large amount of water flowed into the night gas storage tank. Water reacted with light, creating a strong chemical reaction, increasing the pressure inside the tank, finally causing the tank shell to fail under pressure and the internal chemicals to leak into the air. Many would think that factory workers closest to the leak would certainly suffer heavy casualties. However, after the incident, no workers running out of the factory died. Because first, they were all instructed to run upwind to leave the city. Second, they all knew that using wet cloths to cover their eyes and nose and mouth could minimize the harm from the toxic gas. The factory took 3 hours to report the incident to the police. During this time, management evacuated all workers to safety, but did not warn the local residents at all. Union Carbide Corporation deliberately downplayed the severity and impact of the disaster to salvage its image. A few days after the disaster, the company's safety, health, and environment officer described this toxic gas as merely a strong-line irritating gas. Even when faced with data showing thousands of deaths and many others suffering lifelong illnesses, they still defended that viewpoint. Warren Anderson, the plant director who hastily left India, claimed there was sabotage rather than plant management error. More than a year after the incident, he retired and refused to return to India. Although India requested, the United States refused to extradite Anderson to India for trial. Thus, Anderson not only went unpunished but lived comfortably until the end of his life. Earlier there had been warnings and accidents, but most were ignored. In 1976, 2 union organizations protested about pollution conditions in the plant. In 1981, a worker was burned by phosgene. In panic, the worker removed his mask and inhaled a large amount of phosgene gas, and died 72 hours later. In January 1982, in a phosgene leak, 24 exposed workers were hospitalized. None of them were required to wear protective masks. In February 1982, 18 workers were affected by a mic gas leak. In August 1982, a chemical engineer suffered 30% body burns from exposure to liquid mic. In September 1982, there was a leak of MIC, methane carbaryl chloroform, and hydrochloric acid. In an effort to stop the leak, a worker suffered severe chemical burns. 2 others were severely exposed to toxic gas. During 1983-1984, the plant experienced a series of leaks of MIC, chlorine, monomethylamine, phosgene, and carbon tetrachloride. Reports issued months before the disaster by Union Carbide Corporation scientists warned of a potential leak scenario almost identical to what happened in Bhopal. But that report was ignored and never reached senior staff. Union Carbide was also warned beforehand about the disaster by American experts visiting the plant in 1981 about the possibility of exothermic reactions in mic storage tanks. Local authorities also warned the company about accidents occurring since 1979. And once again, these prior warnings were ignored. The damage caused by the Bhopal disaster was immense. To date, there have been 25,000 direct deaths, 550,000 indirect deaths, over 200 people permanently disabled, and 400,000 square kilometers of land contaminated. These injuries continue to persist. An environmental survey in 2009 showed hundreds of tons of toxic chemicals still remain around the chemical plant. Each year, these substances seep into groundwater with rainwater, causing 120,000 to 150,000 Bhopal residents to develop diseases like tuberculosis, and the area around a nearby river is heavily polluted, with birth defect rates in children 10 times higher than the national average. Because the incident occurred in India, a country with many poor and underdeveloped areas. While the main responsible party was a powerful multinational corporation, the process of dealing with the consequences dragged on for over 20. American and Indian lawyers representing the victims demanded that Union Carbide pay compensation and fines of $85 billion. However, Union Carbide blamed Indian employees, only agreeing to pay $230 million in compensation over 20 years in assault. This proposal was flatly rejected by the Indian government. In 1989, the Bhopal District Court in India began the trial process. Union Carbide threatened that if compensation demands were too high, they will conduct cross-examinations with all the plaintiffs, and the trial process could last from 1,500 to 2,000 years. In other words, if they want to receive compensation, India must accept their conditions. Otherwise, they will continue to delay. Finally, after 5 years of litigation, the Indian Supreme Court and Union Carbide reached an agreement. On February 14, 1989, the Indian Supreme Court ruled Union Carbide must pay $470 million for the damages caused by the company. The Indian government would establish a fund to distribute this money to the victims, but this came with 3 additional conditions. Permanent exemption of all civil liabilities of Union Carbide, cancellation of all criminal charges, and any future lawsuits against Union Carbide would be handled by the Indian government. Union Carbide paid an advance of $160 million, but they continuously delayed paying the remaining amount. In 2004, the Indian Supreme Court again demanded Union Carbide pay the remaining amount. From when the incident occurred until compensation was completed was 20 years. During this period, in 1999, Union Carbide was acquired by Dow Chemical, becoming the world's largest chemical corporation, and also succeeded in whitewashing its reputation. Dow Chemical still benefits from Union Carbide's assets, but refuses to take responsibility for past mistakes. In 2009, on the 25th anniversary of the Bhopal disaster, Dow Chemical declared that Union Carbide had done everything possible to help the victims and their families. The lucky survivors of the disaster ultimately received only about $550 to $700 in compensation, if compared to the pain and medical expenses they endured for years. This amount was like a drop in the bucket. Even worse, many victims didn't receive a single penny. In 2010, after 26 years of investigation and trial, 8 defendants, including Anderson and 7 Indian executives, were convicted of culpable homicide due to negligence in a gas leak and sentenced to 2 years in prison. However, they could be released on bail after paying 25,000 rupees. And Anderson remained living in New York, never appearing in court. In other words, aside from that meager compensation, no one was held accountable for this disaster. Before the verdict was announced, survivors and victims' families gathered to protest around the court, arguing that the punishment for those who caused the disaster was too lenient and too late. People couldn't comprehend whether the pain of 700,000 dead and injured could fade with time or not. Today, the Bhopal plant remains with only rusted, decaying equipment, serving as a reminder of what happened on that fateful night. The Bhopal disaster was the result of human cruelty and bottomless greed. Internal factory records show that before the accident occurred, they had begun disposing of toxic waste nearby. For many years, even before the serious leak occurred, everyone deliberately ignores it because they know this factory helps them feed their families. Moreover, multinational corporations and Indian officials continuously seek personal gain. They place the most dangerous and heavily polluting industries where labor costs are dirt cheap. On the surface, it's mutually beneficial cooperation, but in reality, money dictates the game. Where those in power disregard human lives, stopping at nothing to achieve their goals. During the production process, safety standards are continuously lowered. People lull themselves into not caring about their own safety, allowing malicious enemies to poison themselves in their homeland. And although the international community still cares about the disaster's consequences, justice has not been served. The slogans on the streets are the angry and sorrowful voices of the victims. The statue of a mother weeping while holding her child depicts the profound, indelible pain of history. We can only hope that similar industrial disasters will never happen anywhere on Earth.
If the veil stirred, subscribe and meet the next encounter.